As I said before, I know this guy named Igor who works as an assistant at the NASA Observatory for 3 bumbling scientists. Papaya is the forgetful leader. Banani is always messing things up, and Ravioli just thinks about food. Igor always has stories about the chaos they've caused. I was talking about the time they suddenly remembered, right at the last minute, that they had to go to a work conference. We had mentioned that Papaya suddenly remembers at the last moment that the flight to the conference is in 2 hours. The 4 of them rush down the stairs, and I say rush, in the most literal sense. After a failed attempt to get a taxi due to the numerous broken suitcases they're carrying, Papaya decides they'll take the bus. We left off when Papaya and the others, having arrived at the airport, are waiting in line for check-in. Maybe the troubles are over this time, but Igor has already foreseen the next problem. If even the taxi wasn't willing to take them, can you imagine an airline? In fact, the first thing the check-in assistant asks Papaya is how many suitcases they have. Naturally, as Igor points out, they didn't even know this themselves. So Papaya starts counting. 1, 2, 3. They should be 20, if I'm not mistaken. Papaya tells the assistant, "Now, dear Igor, let's take a moment to reflect. Point 1, how can a Nobel Prize winner in mathematics like Papaya not manage to count from 1 to 20? Does that make him feel insecure? Maybe NASA should reconsider the dates for the next space launch." Imagine what Papaya would do with really complicated calculations. Anyway, point 2. What world do these 3 live in? Do they really expect to travel with 20 suitcases, or a number approximately close to that? According to Papaya's calculations, there are 4 people. And as Igor confirms to me, just as I expected, he was only carrying a backpack with a pair of underwear and a toothbrush. So, doing the math correctly, unlike Papaya, it would be 2 scientists with 6 suitcases and 1 with 7. I'm starting to think there must really be a radio telescope and a particle accelerator in there. Point 3. What do they need all this stuff for? Considering they're staying for 1 or 2 days. Well, as Igor advises me, it's better not to dive into these mysteries of science and the human mind. Anyway, as we could have expected, the assistant informs them that they cannot travel with 20 suitcases for 4 people. Papaya, as usual, tries to solve the situation by paying. This didn't work out with the taxi, but it might work now. Maybe by stuffing a couple of broken suitcases inside one another and paying a lot of money. Let me see what I can do, says the assistant, who starts typing. And now, here's a little game for you. What are Banani and Ravioli doing in the meantime? A, looking for a solution to the suitcase problem. B, worried because they won't be able to travel or might have to leave some suitcases behind. C, talking about Ravioli's book. I see you guessed it too. The answer is C. Of course, as if there's nothing more important to talk about, Bernani and Ravioli are discussing the book. Ravioli says that the second fact, when talking about the historical facts that prove the resurrection of Christ, is that the disciples were convinced they had met him after his death. To Bernani, they were out of their minds. To Ravioli, what matters are the facts. Out of their minds or not, the disciples truly believed it. So much so that they preached it publicly, even at a high cost. Ravioli clarifies that according to most critics, Paul's letters are authentic. And in them, Paul states that he met some of the disciples and confirms that they were preaching the resurrection. Bernani is surprised, so we have a real eyewitness. Igor tells me that at that moment he thought, one day I'll write a book as an eyewitness. In fact, in the history of aviation, there has never been a more absurd trip than this one. Audience. Igor cracks me up every time with his stories. And those scientists, I'm speechless. If this story caught your interest, my friends, you can find countless more on Saved Blog. Just visit saveblog.com.